Hello guys and welcome to today's video. Today we're back with 9.1.4, the easy path, full completion and the boss guide slash counters. So obviously as with the rest of the videos we've been through, 9.1, 9.2, 9.3, today we'll be talking about the easiest path, which I believe to be the nebula path, then the best counters for each path, and all three of the bosses. In this case, we have Lady Deathstrike, Black Widow Deadly Origin, Black Widow Clairvoyant, and Vox. Black Widow Clairvoyant is by far the hardest 9.1 boss in my opinion. If you've got the right counter, a Void for example, or really, there are very limited counters, which I don't have any yet. But if you've got a Void, this fight becomes that little bit easier, which we all want. So let's talk through the paths first, and then we'll go through the bosses. If these videos are helping you out, please do leave a like and subscribe down below. That would be massively appreciated. So without any further ado, let's move on. So we've got Nebula, the path first. Whenever a cosmic attacker activates a striker, they inflict a panic, preventing miss or evade for 14 seconds. This is important because there is Mixmaster and True Lies on here. Mixmaster, if you attack the same basic or attempt the same basic attack twice in a row, they have a 100% chance to evade, so basically they will evade. True Strike, True Accuracy, True Focus, True Sense don't work, so you can't bring in champs like Hercules, even though you wouldn't use him for an evade, but let's say Killmonger with his True Focus, or Mole Man, or Craven, or anyone like that who will be preventing evade with their True Strike or True Accuracy. Each time the defender receives a stun debuff, they reduce the duration of further stuns unless you have an active buff or a prowess passive. And that's really it. So there's two ways you can go about this. Counters to evade, because that is the main thing in this fight, is because of the Mixmaster node, evade counters. So these are champions with cold snap, so you could go with Iceman for, say, the Moon Knight fight, or the Jubilee fight, not the tech champions. You could bring in Shang-Chi, who is someone I bought in, or you can bring it in your highest rated cosmic relic champions. So for example, if I've got on my champions, I've got a 6-star Gamora on my Gallon, so I bring in Gallon. Venom obviously worked really well for this because he always had buffs, which meant that my stun debuffs weren't losing their duration, and really this is a relatively easy path. You've not got any hard defenders on here, potentially the Hulkbuster, but if you bring in somebody like Gallon, or say a Venom or Venompool, and you have those active buffs and someone who's, or if they're shock immune, this works really, really well. I would highly recommend bringing in like a Shang-Chi, a sort of a champion with slow, She-Hulk, because in case you don't, for the first little bit of the fight, you do have to work on stun. So the easiest way to do this is stun them, build up to your relic, throw your relic, and then by the time your relic, that 14 seconds has ended, your relic is ready again, and then, easy path. So that is by far the easiest path, the one beginning with Nebula. Then we have the Captain America path in second. This one is quite annoying. I'm not a big fan of this path. I don't actually find the Iceman path that hard. The only reason you've seen it's not completed yet is because of that Clairvoyant boss. So on the Captain America path, we've got Scourge again. This is why I'm not a big fan of it. Defender gains 3% chance to evade for each Scourge. So 3% is actually relatively high. If you get to 10 Scourges, 30%. But when struck, the defender has a 5% chance per Scourge to activate a cleanse. So this gets rid of slow. So, your slow champions can't stop that evade. The more Scourges there are, the less chance you've got slow. The best way to pause this timer is by during special attacks. And every 6 seconds, the defender is knocked down by a special attack per level of the special attack. So, say if it's a special 2, the timer is paused for 12 seconds. And then, when you strike them when they are cornered, you get that 4 scout scourges are removed. That's that clarifying node there. So really keep them in the corner. But because 3% is base and they always tend to have scourge charges, there is always that chance of evading and that cleanse. So really, you either want to be pausing it a lot with special attacks, so champions with either a slow on their special 1 or who keep up that slow. If you're using Shang-Chi, you want to try to be keeping that slow in as much as possible by locking him against the corner. I used for this path, who was very, very good, was Chilf, because she has that special 1 where has the grit, which means you're able to counter the most annoying thing on this path, and that is the unstoppable. Every 9 seconds they gain a 3-second unstoppable, while again this gets them out of the wall basically, so it makes it harder for you to keep them in the wall, and obviously your slow is being cleansed because while they're out of the wall they're building scourge charges, etc. You can see why this path has its complications. So I would say most champions with grit, really off the top of my head, it's Beta Ray Bill and Chilf, or champions who can hit right through like Valkyrie would be very, very good for this path, just to keep them locked into that corner. Obviously slow champions also work, and the hardest defender on here is by far Wasp. Very, very annoying, hard to get back into the corner because of that annoying evade she has. So if you can bring in somebody with like a cold snap to stop them from evading, that works really well as well, or to get rid of that unstoppable. The unstoppable is by far the hardest part of this path. Mystic champions do work as well, your Dooms, your Rintrahs, to get rid of that, but yeah, difficult path, that one for sure. And then finally, the Iceman path. So tech attackers under the effect of an armor buff will power drain 15% of the defender's max power each time they parry. Each time a tech attacker power drains, power burns, or locks the opponent, you gain a passive fury of 35%. So this can take your attack up to 350% at 10 stacks, which is massive. So really, as you can already see, tech champions with a armor up are the best here, but they also need to have shock debuffs because without them, they do 90% less damage. Really, really good champions for this are Hulkbuster. Shuri can work because she always has the shocks, but she doesn't necessarily gain the armor ups because they're passive armor ups. Hulkbuster, as I said, works really well. Iron Man Infinity War works really nicely because on his special 1 he gets that long shock and he has the power drain included. You can also use Red Skull. Obviously works very, very well for this fight. So just basically your tech attackers or your tech champions who have an armor up and can do shock. They're really all you need. Do bring in a Domino counter for Domino. I use Shuri, but Guardian also works because I'm pretty sure on his SP2 he puts on a very long shock as well. So that wasn't a bad path at all. It just then gets to the annoying Clairvoyant, but you can obviously go through a different way and not take out that Clairvoyant and take out a different boss and leave maybe the easiest path, this Nebula path, for that Clairvoyant. So on to the bosses. At first, we have Lady Deathstrike. Relatively easy fight this one. Knocking down her with a Mystica Champ inflicts a passive neutralize for 9 seconds. So you can either bring in somebody like Wiccan, who I used, and just constantly have that your regular neutralize on, but knock her down as well. So you get that. This prevents the arc overload, so her healing back 25% of her max health. When she's knocked down, she does become debuff immune for 8 seconds, so this is a little bit annoying. This doesn't get rid of the passive neutralize or neutralize in general, but it does mean any buffs you're putting on her, or debuffs, sorry, are being removed. Well-timed blocks start a timer. If you do it again, you get a falter, so just be aware of that. Try not to do too many well-timed blocks. Then we've got Deathstrike Ferocity. This isn't really, if you play this fight well or even just okay, this won't bother you too much. But she basically gains a 1 stacking contingency charge to a max of 3 when you dash back if she's got Ferocity active. So yeah, not a difficult fight at all. Just bring in your Mystic Champs. Wiccan worked really well for this. Again, Rintra works well, Doom works well, America Chavez, the Destroyer, any of those Mystic champions really. Then we move on to Vox, another pretty easy fight. The defender is immune to Nullify, Stagger, and Fate Seal. Intercepting or interrupting the defender's basic attacks disables this immunity for 15 seconds. So it's all about intercepting, so you can Nullify, Stagger, and Fate Seal, but you can see here you can still neutralize, so again, Wiccan is very good. Wiccan is a very strong champion for all of 9.1, so if you're just watching this video before you start it, I do highly recommend ranking him up. I certainly did. Whenever the defender is intercepted or the heavy attack is interrupted, they gain Indefinite Fury. Once at 5 Furies, they gain a Fury passive increase in attack by 200%, so you gain a Fury passive. So really you want to keep intercepting and to eventually get yourself a big Fury. Every 8 seconds, the defender gains an Unstoppable buff, unless they're suffering from a bleed debuff or passive, so you can bring in bleed champs. Symbiote Supreme worked really nicely for this, because obviously he has the bleed. I used him and Wiccan for this fight, Symbiote Supreme for most of it. And it works, or you can just bring in a Neutralize, and that, works just as well. So Wiccan or Rintra are very, very good for this fight. And then you've got some other little bits for each debuff. They reduce the duration of incoming debuffs by 30%, so you can't stack up like hundreds of bleeds, but enough to make it worth it and to get rid of that annoying Unstoppable. And then finally, the Black Widow Clairvoyant. So a very, very annoying fight, this one. One, as you can see, I've not completed yet, but have given an attempt at. Every 2 seconds, she gains a regen passive, and when struck, you reset the timer of this passive. So obviously, at after 8 seconds, she's regenerating 1% of her health. If you take her down to 90%, she's back in no time. Each time a regeneration buff or passive is activated, if the defender is not heal blocked, she gains a Dormant Vigor. Once she reaches 10 vigors, they're consumed and she gains a passive Fury, so she becomes even more powerful. She then has protection as well as that regen, so you have to get the protection off, do as much damage as you possibly can without the regen healing her up too much. This is removed by intercepting her again. She also has Footloose, so she has Unstoppable and an evade buff for 7 seconds after she activates a special. And you can't use 2 specials too close together, otherwise you get a glance debuff. You're also inflicted with a power sting. This may as well be 9.1.6 because it's far harder. You have to think about the regen, so you have to make sure you have a heal block champion, but then that heal block champion has to be good at intercepting, has to be able to prevent, evade, or Unstoppable, or have really good power control. So, in my opinion, the only champion who really works for this is Quicksilver, but Quicksilver has to also prevent that regen, and he doesn't have heal block. So you can sort of see why this fight becomes a really big issue, in my opinion. There's too much going on. Every time, if you were to use Quicksilver, the protection comes back on. It obviously will remove all debuffs. It just makes it very, very difficult to do this fight properly. And it's really one of the worst boss fights I've seen in a very, very long time. Void obviously works the best for this fight because he has the slow and the petrify. So he's heal blocking and stopping it. If you've got a Void, perfect, bring him in and this fight isn't an issue. But other than that, you are going to have to look at champions who potentially have a heal block but who can't stop evade. And obviously while you're waiting for that Unstoppable and evade to end, you can't stop the regen because you can't hit into her. It's really, really, it really is a very, very silly fight, and one that I'm not looking forward to completing, but we'll be doing very, very soon. So yeah, that just makes the fight a massive pain in the... We have also got a little bit of the Vox fight, so let's jump into that now before we finish off this video, just to show you the champions I used and a bit of the fight. So as you can see on screen, we're jumping into the Vox fight now. I've taken in Symbiote Supreme. Doom is obviously there just to help with that reduction of buffs and to stop the unstoppable, etc, etc. But the Chilf is also there for the bleed. So the main part of this, I always think one of the most annoying things in this game is unstoppable, because obviously there's enough counters to remove it, but once somebody say is unstoppable, it becomes a lot harder. So you can see how good Symbiote Supreme is now. Keeps getting the staggers on. Vox is taken down. You know, he's losing quite a bit of health from that stagger, because obviously once it's on him, it's staggering buffs and causing him to do damage. But Vox was Symbiote Supreme was very good. I just kept messing this fight up. I would highly recommend him, and I kind of wanted to go in and give it another go and just see how many times, like you see there, that burst of massive damage from nullifying it all was just unbelievable. So Symbiote Supreme, a very good counter. You know, he's just taken almost, what, 600k? Let's go back and have a look at that big red number there. So you can see here we're in Intercept, Special 1, bang, 648,000 damage from Symbiote Supreme. Just an unbelievable champion for this fight, and the bleed helps massively as well. So then we come in with Doom, try and do a little bit of the Doom cycle. I don't actually think it comes off very well, which you guys will see, but it will also show that Doom is also a very good counter. I just keep messing up these stupid intercepts with that protection. So hopefully these videos are helping you out. If they are, please do like and subscribe. That would be massively appreciated. All the help around here is just great, and hopefully if you are enjoying, comment down below, let me know where you are, and I'll interact with you down there. Thank you guys for watching. See you in the next video. Goodbye.